Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alisa Sladzinska, and I work for the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP. Welcome to the BACP Business Education Workshop Webinar Series. We have adapted our regular business education workshops at City Hall into these webinars until further notice. On behalf of our Commissioner, Rosa Scarino, I want to inform you that business licenses can be processed online where applicable by visiting chicagobusinessdirect.org. And any emails or websites that I mentioned, I will post in the chat box, so you'll be able to reference them there as well. And if you are part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. If you want to learn about the program, please visit chicago.gov/businesseducation. To help guide your business and employees during Chicago's reopening process, please visit chicago.gov/reopening. Also, BACP and the City of Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communications created ShyBiz Emergency Alerts. You can opt in to receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community. If you are interested, please visit chicago.gov/ShyBizAlerts. And we encourage attendees to ask questions. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. Please send your questions in the chat box to all panelists. And today's webinar will be Reimagining Your Business, Tips on How to Survive and Thrive. It will be presented by Shelby Parchman, Managing Partner of InUrban Strategies. Welcome, Shelby.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Alyssa. It's great to be here. So do you just want me to go ahead and get started?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And thank you for having me and hosting me and inviting me into the webinar series. And I certainly appreciate working with the City of Chicago in many aspects. So first of all, I want to welcome our attendees and thank you for participating this morning. And I hope everybody's having a great morning. And as Alyssa said, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. If I miss them, we will certainly catch them at the end of the presentation. So we do have some time for questions at the end of the presentation. So first of all, we're going to talk about reimagining your business and, as we said, tips on how to survive and thrive. And just to give everyone a quick introduction of who I am, if you don't know me already, my name is Shelby Parchman, and I'm the Managing Partner of InUrban Strategies. And we are a consulting firm that I started a couple of years ago after working in the nonprofit area in the areas of economic development primarily, especially out in the south and west sides of Chicago. I was the former managing director of Sunshine Enterprises Entrepreneurship Training Program. For this organization, our key areas of operations are strategic planning, where we help businesses and nonprofits think more strategically about growth strategies and financing strategies. But we also work with organizations, nonprofit organizations, to design and develop programs. And also, in many cases, we help them deliver the program. So from start to finish, we develop those programs, come up with concepts, look at how we can make those programs unique, and then help deliver the content using some of our in-house experts. And then access to capital. We work with a lot of small businesses in getting loans. And we also work with nonprofit organizations, especially the larger ones, and helping them develop funding strategies. And that goes along with the program development. How do we develop programs that are fundable? And when you're doing that, you really need to have programs that number one, they have true impact, but they also have some innovation to it. And then this year we're starting to provide a lot of back office support in terms of accounting and bookkeeping and some assistance with marketing to our clients as we see that has become a big need. And so some of our key projects and our clients, we work with Rush University Medical Center in an area we call supply chain localization. In this area, we help Rush identify small West Side businesses for procurement opportunities with Rush. So if you have a small West Side business and you're looking to increase sales, we certainly would love to hear from you because we're looking for businesses in many areas in terms of industries, whether it's food service, IT, just run a gamut, anything that Rush could use. We're looking for those small businesses, even pest control and printing, so a lot of areas. We also a technical assistance provider for Summer Corps and the NOF programs, so we help NOF recipients get funding for their projects. We work with the Department of Planning and Development, and we developed an urban agriculture program, but not about growing, but more so the business of urban agriculture. So we developed the program, and we're also delivering the program. And then one of my favorite and fun programs is working with the organization Family Farm to do more program development and delivery, but also we're helping them with their operations planning and operations management. And so that we have other projects going on, but these are our 4 top projects that that are pretty near and dear to us, and we feel that we're making the biggest impact. So I always like to start off with learning objectives. I don't want anybody to sit into something and not understand what's coming up and what they're going to learn. So number one, I want everybody to get more and increased knowledge of the small business environment, understanding risk management and how to use a SWOT analysis, and strategic planning. Then we're going to look at 3 simple case studies on how InUrban as an organization survived during these tumultuous times. And we'll talk briefly about how to develop a simple strategic plan. And then we'll end it with some tips on surviving and thriving. So for now, as we get started with the nuts and bolts and the meat and potatoes of this presentation, I'm going to say we're going to enter the no pivoting zone. So no more pivoting. We've done enough of that. That word is, to me, is just so worn out. And then I feel that most businesses, when set up correctly, pivoting shouldn't be a word. Adjusting maybe, modifying, but pivoting says that you were not doing it right. And to me, it says you weren't doing it right and you need to do it all over again or start in a different fashion. But what you'll see is as we start talking about more strategic planning, we will look more at how do we set up the business for success no matter what happens. Now, of course, this is some very unprecedented times. And I always tell people, if you have survived the COVID and the riots in Chicago, I don't think I can tell you anything else because you're pretty much on a good track. But unfortunately, most businesses are having some issues. And so we want to explore how we can help you get through those issues. And that's going to be more the purpose of the talk and not necessarily about pivoting. So no more pivoting. So the first question I was asked, and I've done this presentation in different fashions, and a lot of it was about risk assessment, but that is the most key portion that I think a lot of business owners don't look at. And so, ask yourself, and I know I can't see anyone, but, think about it. Have you really done a complete risk assessment of your business? And the thing about a business risk assessment, the risks that businesses have, most of them we don't see, we don't know. And so I say, if you touch a stove, you only have to do it once. And if it's hot, you say, okay, I can't touch that hot stove again. And in many instances, there's always these dangers signs, and they're telling us that risk is inherent and what the risk will be. But really, when we think about business risk, it's always something that we never thought about. Who would have thought that COVID-19 would have shut down the country? Who would have thought that when we start thinking about recovering from COVID, then riots hit the city? So these are things that the business risks are so hard to really predict. And I always say when you do contingency planning, usually what happens is you plan for everything that won't happen. And then something else comes up that happens, and all of a sudden it's like, how do I handle this? And so, once again, if you start looking at your business from more of a strategic standpoint, it makes that risk assessment a lot easier, and it makes getting through those difficult times a lot easier. So, how do you assess your business? So, you look at the five, we call them the five key internal areas. And this is what we teach when we do entrepreneurship training, we do program development. Look at your sales. So look at who's running the company. Look at your marketing. That's how you're getting the word out about your company. How is your company being operated? And then how is your company financed? And if you can get a handle on those five things, then it makes it a lot easier to manage risk. And then, I just talked about that in the external factors. And it's like, who really knows what's going to happen? And you really don't know. And so, once again, it's really about having a key plan in place and then being able to adjust that plan. That really helps you understand, number one, understand the risk, manage the risk, and get through some of the most difficult times that you may have in your business. All right, so we always say strategic planning is crucial. And anytime we take on a client, the first thing we do is we start looking at what is their strategic plan. And their strategic plan, usually in most instances, they don't have a great strategic plan. So what we need to do is come in and help them develop out that strategic plan. So we look at those five areas. What can you do to help yourself from a financial sense? And we'll talk about that a little later. And most businesses, they're not well capitalized, and that's usually the key part of it. When we look at marketing, how effective is your marketing plan? And what we have discovered is that most people market for the sake of marketing. Someone says, okay, you need to have a website and a social media presence and just keep throwing stuff on Facebook or Instagram, and that's your marketing plan. But in many instances, that doesn't work, and that doesn't have a good return on investment for our clients or for most businesses. Then we look at management, who's running the company. And unfortunately, most entrepreneurs are good visionaries but poor managers. And so that is something we help develop out as well. So, and that is helping train our entrepreneurs on how to become better managers and some of the key aspects of being a successful business manager. And then even worse is the operational side. And that really comes in, how do you manage finances? Is your bookkeeping up to date? Do you have processes in place? So if you had to take a day off, could someone else come and take over? And one of the issues we have, even in some of the larger organizations that we work with, the operational side is the side that needs the most help. And so what we do is we come up with processes and solutions to help them operate more efficiently and more effectively. And a lot of times it's really about even managing the talent that you have. We have one organization that we call operating in silos, in that you have 5 different areas and everybody in those 5 areas are working separately and they're not talking to each other. And so you have efforts that are being duplicated and you have a lot of things being missed. And so what we want to do is, what we encourage our business owners to do is really look at how to make your operations much more efficient and much more effective. And then it comes down to sales, where most people and business owners confuse sales and marketing. And so when it really comes to marketing, it's more about brand recognition, and sales, as I say, is about closing the deal. And I'll give a quick example of that. And it's really simple, because I like to keep things simple, because really the concepts in business can be very simple, but sometimes more complex to put into place. So I had this client years ago, and he was selling T-shirts for big and tall men. And he came to me and he said, well, I'm not selling T-shirts. I need to sell more T-shirts, and I don't know how. So I asked him, I said, so what are you doing to sell these T-shirts? And he says, oh, well, I have the Facebook page. I have an e-commerce site. I have all these organic likes on Facebook and da-da-da-da-da-da. And so he kept going on, and all I hear is, I'm marketing. And I told him, I said, well, I hear a lot of marketing, but you haven't done anything to sell your product. And so brand awareness is cool, but how do you get people to purchase your product? So what I suggested he do is I said, well, go to a park. He's on the south side on a Saturday morning. It was summertime. And I said, there has to be a lot of big and tall men in the park on a Saturday morning. Take the T-shirts and go out and start selling, and start telling people the story about the T-shirts and see if they buy it. And he actually sold out his T-shirts that weekend. And so part of it is, and the lesson to be learned here is that when you're trying to sell a product and you're trying to increase sales in your business, it's really about relationship building. And so you have to think about now, how do you build those relationships where you can bring those sales in? And then, and I put in red external forces because, once again, those are things that it's so difficult for us to understand what external forces are going to hit us. So part of it is we have to be more prepared for almost anything and figure out how to get through it. And that really requires having a system in place. But once that system's in place, how do we then use that system to overcome what's getting thrown at us? And I know as business owners, we all encounter these external forces on a daily basis. Sometimes they are very strong external forces, like global pandemic, and sometimes there have been weaker ones, like a bad product went out or a customer not satisfied with something that you did, and maybe it's not under your control, but you have to figure out how to do it. And so what I say in terms of the take-home message for strategic planning is it's the best way to get back on track if right now you're off track. And if you're still on track, it's the best way to stay on track. And so that's why we encourage a lot of strategic planning, and that's what we built our business around. All right, and so now let's get into our business owners. And I always ask people, why did they start their business? And usually I get two answers. One, I want to earn more money. And the second one is I have a passion for what I do. And I know the answer is usually a combination of the two. People have a passion for what they love to do, and they want to earn money in the process. And so the question is, can these two peacefully coexist? And it's really hard to say yes or no, but I think they can. But what I ask people to do is to really think about, number one, first following your passion, because I feel that if you're starting a business, you should do what you love doing, because chances are out the gate, you're not going to make money. So, but what I discovered is that if you continue to be passionate about what you do, and then you figure out how to earn money doing it. And I would say you don't want to have a business that you're not really enjoying and you're not earning money, because that's a pretty not a good place to be in terms of business. And I feel that you won't be doing it much longer. But what I look at too is, and we'll talk about this a little later, is that a lot of businesses have a tendency, a lot of business owners have a tendency to look at it and say, I see a business opportunity where there's an opportunity to make money. And that's the first thing they look at. And I always say that that is the last thing you want to do in a business. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but if you're going into business just for the money, chances are you're going into it for the wrong reason. And so you really have to have these two balanced, the desire to earn more money, but also having a passion for what you do. Now, on the other hand, there are some businesses that you can get into that it may be easier to earn money out the gate. And then there's some others that you get into that it may take a while to build up to earning money. So what you have to do as a business owner is decide where are you in life and what can you withstand in terms of going into business and maintaining a business. And a lot of the planning, I always say, starts before you even go into business. And I think that's another place where people fail to really realize how much planning has to go into it and really a thoughtful process. And I'm going to take you through some of that a little later. So I threw this number up here, and if I was sitting in a room and had a bunch of people in the room, I would ask what is this number and what does it mean? 650,487. And this number, depending on the source, can change a little bit, but it's pretty close in every article that I've read. But this is the average number of businesses that start in the U.S. every month. not every year, but every month. And that's a lot of small businesses. However, as we all know, and these numbers can fluctuate a little bit as well, depending on the source, but we look at the failure rate of businesses. And businesses that have been around for 3 years have a 44% failure rate, and businesses that have been around in 10 years, in 3 years, the failure rate is 44%. And by the time year 10 hits out, you have 71% of those businesses failing. And that's a really high number. And so, we don't want to be one of those statistics in terms of I had a business failure. And once again, so we get back to this point of, have you really planned for business success? And we also think about it in terms of dollar amounts. So most businesses do not earn a ton of money. And that's okay, but we have to also understand why are we in business. So only 5% of the small businesses earn $1 million in revenue. And when we jump up to $25 million in revenue, only 1% of that 5% earn more than $25 million in revenue. So that's a very, very small number. And so you ask yourself then, why are businesses not doing well? And so we did some research and we looked at the Small Business Administration and articles in the Harvard Business Review. And this is what we came up with in terms of why companies fail. Number one, not number one, but these are some of the items. Lack of demand at a profitable price, lack of cash flow management, incorrect product pricing, lack of cash cushion, out of control growth, and then attempting to grow too quickly. And when you think about these, all of these issues are related to not having enough money or not managing the money correctly. So most businesses will fail, and I think that the number is pretty high. I think something related to cash comes up to about 82% of the businesses, and this is why they fail. So knowing that, it was seen that your strategic plan would really focus around how do I keep cash in the business. And I feel that most people, when they go out and start a business, for whatever reason, do not have enough cash. And so not having the capital available to weather a storm, and I'm not saying even huge storms, but we're talking about small storms, a customer not paying on time, not getting a sale when you want to sell. These are the things that could put a company out of business very quickly. And so then we go back to, if you had to close your business for any reason, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a riot, whether the city decides to shut down your street or something, the customers can't get to you, the cash cushion is what helps you survive through those crises. And so what we encourage people to do is we encourage them to do a SWOT analysis. And I know this, in many instances, this seems to be so cliche, what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, correct? But this is a really good exercise. And any company that comes to us and they need assistance, we have them do the SWOT analysis. But we don't have them do a SWOT analysis for the sake of doing a SWOT analysis. So when you're looking at, what are your true strengths, part of it is you shouldn't always do your own SWOT analysis. You should have some external people coming in and saying, hey, take a look at my business. What do you think my strengths are? What do you think my weaknesses are? Because most business owners, what we think are strengths are not necessarily strengths that's going to help the business grow. And those weaknesses, who wants to admit that we have weaknesses, right? So we kind of brush over those things. Even the threats and opportunities, we don't want to take a look at a deep dive into those things and what really are those things that affect my business. But when you start understanding those things, then it helps you to make more of a strategic plan around how do we weather those storms. So when we start looking at those external things, the threats, what are the threats to my business? So I know now a lot of business owners, I guess all business owners could add global pandemic to their external threats possible. Some can add riot, civil unrest to their threats. But there are some businesses who they can add these same things to their opportunities, right? So when the global pandemic hit, that became an opportunity for a lot of businesses. So you look just on the larger side, the tech companies, Zoom, stock went up a lot. There's this company called Bandwidth who supplies, bandwidth to internet companies. Their stock went up. So anything related to working from home, the stocks went up tremendously. But also we find companies that had an online presence, they were able to do better because now people are now shopping more online. Me, I used to never shop online, and now I'm a big online shopper. So being able to assess, even in times of what we think are times of, civil unrest or dark times, being able to assess and look at it and say, there are opportunities in this area. And so what are the opportunities for me? I know a lot of people now are making masks. That was an opportunity. And there's always going to be an opportunity there as long as we are in the midst of this. And who knows, more than likely you'll see more and more people wearing masks. And I would say, especially in the U.S., we tend to be more fashionable. So the regular old hospital masks just won't work for us. We need to have masks that are like custom design and designer masks and all other logos and things like that. So that has become opportunities for a lot of companies. So really think about it. Even in times of trouble, there are opportunities to be had from it. And so how can your business model adjust to take advantage of some of those opportunities? And so just to give you an idea, when we look at SWOT analysis and the strengths, we look at critical success factors that's going to give you a competitive advantage. And so one of the things that I look at, and I always laugh at people when they come in and they say, hey, my product is the best out there. Your product isn't the best out there. That's your opinion. It's not the customer's opinion. We're going to give great service. So does everybody else. And so it has to be more than that. It has to be really what do you have in your business and yourself that's really critical to the success of your business. And once again, sometimes you're not the one who can help you with that because you have already implicit bias in terms of you feel that these are your strengths. But saying you have a best something is not a strength because that's really qualitative and not quantitative. So if you have a unique process, that's a strength. If you have a unique product, that's a strength. If you have a unique market that really enjoys what you're doing or they like your product, that's a strength. If you have some type of intellectual property, that's a strength. And sometimes location can be a strength. If you are a daycare center and you're in the middle of a community where there are two, dual income couples who work and they need daycare, and there's only one daycare center in the whole community, that's a strength. Not to say competition won't come, but that could be a strength. Then you look at weaknesses, and these are characteristics that put your product development at a disadvantage to others, your product or service at a disadvantage to others. And so some of these things, and once again, it's hard to think about what is a weakness. But one of the things that I look at, location can be a weakness. Some people think not necessarily, they always think their location is the best location, or they locate because the rent's cheaper. And that actually can put you at a competitive disadvantage. And I had one client who was years ago, they had a resale shop and they put it in an industrial area. And I'm like, well, why did you put it here? And it's like, well, the rent's cheap. But there's no customers can come see you. You're basing this on walk-up customers. You're on the second floor in an industrial area. And this is a true story. It sounds far-fetched, but this is a true story. When right across the street, there was retail spaces in a strip mall that were 3 times as much. But the reason it's 3 times as much is because you get more foot traffic. So there are a lot of things that you really need to stop and think about. What are your weaknesses? And then I would say most businesses should write down that finances can be one of my weaknesses because we see that a lot. And so how do you shore up the finances of your business? But also look at it, the goals of your business and where you are personally, because your personal financial situation can also be a weakness to your business. And so then we look at opportunities, and we talked a little bit about this. I won't belabor the point, but those are the factors that put your business in a position to earn more revenue and greater profits. And so we talked about, having, when there are issues in the marketplace, if you can find ways to get around those issues and come up with a product or service that serves the marketplace and increases your revenue, or some type of process that you can use to increase your profitability. And so look at those and say, what are those opportunities, and how can I make those opportunities and those external factors work for me? But then the threats, and once again, I always feel that the threats are the most difficult thing to come up with in terms of business ownership. But there are some threats that could be almost conceivable because of the nature of your business, right? And so then look at other things that could happen, but not necessarily things that are going to be, that are just immediate threats, but also start thinking about threats that could come down the road. And once again, hopefully we'll never have another global pandemic. Hopefully, and it seems like the civil unrest is starting to subside, but there are other threats that could affect your business, and think about those and how you can overcome those, because it's not just the point of writing these things down, but when we start talking about the strengths and opportunities, how do we put these into our strategic plan to help our business survive? And then we look at our weaknesses and threats, and then how do we come up with plans to overcome those when things happen? And so I would say, think about your business and use these concepts and apply these concepts to your business today, and start working towards a more strategic plan in your business. So just to give you a quick tool, a quick look at a SWOT analysis, and this is a very simple one, but we say that the SWOT analysis should be your initial assessment tool. So if you had an e-commerce store, one of the strengths would be that it has lower operational costs than a brick and mortar store, which is true, right? You don't have to pay rent, so reduce a lot of your fixed costs. But one of it could be, and this, I can tell you this, I used to sell water, functional beverages, as we call them. And e-commerce back, say, in 2009, 2010 was pretty difficult, because water is very heavy and it's very expensive to ship. So if we would ship a case of water, we have to double the price to make up for the shipping. So that made e-commerce on that end, on the beverage side, a lot more difficult. What are some of the opportunities, say, in the e-commerce business? You can have live chat, customer service, increased customer service. And then, there are some advantages to retail that, people can come in and touch and feel, but there's also advantages to e-commerce where you can, in many instances, the client will order things, and they will try them out, and they will keep a lot of things, and they can send some back. But it gives them the opportunity to shop at their leisure and try things on at their leisure, which means a lot to a lot of customers. And then also, if you have samples, it's easy enough to get people to try things by shipping smaller amounts online through online portals, and then hoping for that big sale later on down the road. And then some of the threats, and basically a lot of them were around the regulatory challenges, and also how is sales tax collected and paid, because that can be a nightmare as well. And then a more complex SWOT analysis was one I'm showing from Nestlé. And so they really take a very, very detailed look into what are those things that can help them grow as an organization. And you think Nestlé is a global brand, but they also have weaknesses, right? Every brand, every company has weaknesses. And you see how they labeled it. These are things that are helpful, and these are things that are harmful. And that's another way of looking at it, things that can help you and things that can harm you. And that makes it pretty simple. And on the right-hand side of my screen, I have social media activities. And I know there's a lot of people who can't separate business from personal. And so you have to be very careful, especially in this world of you putting your business, your company, whatever your company is doing online, and you're using social media as a marketing tool. But you also have to think about the personal side of social media as well. And a lot of times people will combine the two. And I had an instance like that where one of our clients started taking some very strong and unpopular opinions on their personal social media page, but they also invited people who were their customers to be a part of their personal page. So when they started voicing those unpopular opinions, they started losing customers. And so one of the things that you want to do to keep your business strong is to make sure you separate your personal social media stuff from your business stuff. And to also, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be vocal, but you should always be careful about what you say and how you say it. And so in my organization, we actually have a communications person who, before we put out anything, we run it through our communications persons to make sure that what we say, we're saying it in a way that cannot be misconstrued or misconceived, or it doesn't cause a lot of controversy. We're not in the business of being, say, a political activist, religious activist, social activist. We're in the business of providing goods and services to our customers, and so we want to keep it that way. And what we do on our personal side is something totally different that we try to keep separated from the business. And so we talk about risk management, and I feel that strategic growth is certainly related to risk management. And matter of fact, I feel that it's an equivalent to risk management. So how do we look at risk? And I think a lot of business owners don't really take this very seriously, and you really should. And so let's look at, say, 2019 and a risk profile for 2019. And this is something just based on companies that I've worked with and what contributes to their risk. And usually about 47% of the risk that I see is usually around finances and having enough money to continue the business and to make sure the bills are being paid and make sure the business can grow. And then the other side is more strategic because they're not really focused on that. Usually they're focusing on running the business. But now we fast forward to, say, September 2020, or even we go back to April 2020, then finances become even a bigger contribution to risk. And I say 56%. In some companies, it has become 95%. You know, I've had one of the vendors that I work with, and they came and told me they are strong-arming people to pay their bills early because they're about to go out of business. And so that is just the state of businesses now, because there are a lot of external forces. As you can see in 2019, they may not have had they had some contribution to risk, but in the present, external forces and finance is taking up almost 75% of the risk that's involved in running a business today. And so those are the two areas that I feel that most people need to really get together in terms of getting their businesses keeping their businesses going well and staying on track. I'm sorry about that. For some reason, my phone is connected. Apologize for the interruption. So we're back on track here. So now I want to get into, now that we kind of understand risk and what's going on with risk, I want to talk about how 3 case studies in terms of InUrban and how we survived through all the things that have been going on in the recent world. So we have a few portfolio companies, and one is the main portfolio company is our consulting firm, InUrban Strategies. And so what we like to say is our customer base is considered recession-proof. And so I started my life in my professional career in the pharmaceutical industry, which taught me about recession-proof because pharmaceuticals are considered one of the most recession-proof industries because people always need some type of medical treatment and pharmaceutical products and drugs. But what we like to consider is that our customer base is pretty much recession proof. And so how explain that, right? And so we mainly work with nonprofit organizations that are centered around economic development. And so what we find is that the worse the economy gets, the more activities around economic development happens. So what we've been seeing is an increase in business as the pandemic hits, as the riots hit. We have our businesses almost doubled in this past year. So that has helped a lot and helped us stay on track. The business has been well capitalized, but it's a consulting firm, and so we don't have a lot of overhead. We don't do a lot of marketing. Actually, we do zero marketing, but we have a very strong network, and that is very important to businesses. And I always tell people that don't network just for the sake of networking, which most people do. People say, let's attend a networking event. Before I attend a networking event, I want to know who's there, and is there something that, number one, I can contribute to the event, but also is there something I can get out of the event? So because your time is really precious as a business owner, and I find a lot of my clients will attend every networking event they can, but they come back with no return on investment. And so what I look at as a business owner, I'm always looking for a return on investment. And so even when I'm putting my time into something, especially networking, what can I get back out of that? We talked about there's a lot of new business opportunities that we are able to pursue because of what's going on. But we also make sure in the instances where we can is we lock our clients into long-term contracts. Not to say that that is a remedy for all things, but at least it's a good start. And then lean operations. And this is one area that I notice a lot of the clients I work with, they love fancy offices and they spend a good deal of money on fixed costs. And so what we encourage our business owners to do is to try to find as many ways as possible to reduce those fixed costs. And it starts with rent. And that's where we find a lot of a lot of clients of ours actually have offices when they could be working from home. Or they could be using some, shared co-working space or something like that. And then lastly, we embrace technology. We were doing Zoom meetings long before people heard of Zoom meetings. I remember a couple of years ago, someone wanted to meet from out of town and we could not connect. And I said, well, let's meet via Zoom. And they were like, oh, well, what's that? And I'm like, well, you haven't heard of Zoom? So we do a lot of workshops. And so we wanted to make sure that people from all over the country could actually participate in our workshops. So we embraced the technology out the gate very early. And so when all of these things happened where the world shut down, we started doing classes for our clients online within 24 hours. So there was no quote unquote pivoting. That was just, okay, instead of meeting in person, here's the Zoom link. Let's go. I mean, we had everything set up. We had the technology set up. We had the lighting perfect. We had everything ready to go. And the crazy part about InUrban Strategies, it's our best performing portfolio company. But until last month, we didn't even have a website. And we do very little social media activity. And I know that goes against the grain of how do you run a successful business. But part of it is when we did our strategic planning, we understood where our sales were coming from. Our sales were coming from our network. And our network didn't really care about our website because they knew us well. So we put very little effort into a website, and we put very little effort into social media presence, and we put more effort on producing outcomes where now we would have word of mouth and say, hey, if you want this program developed, you call InUrban. And so that's what we've really been seeing. And so we actually have clients who have come to us in the last couple of months saying, hey, we were told that if we needed a new program developed, we come to you guys. And so that eliminated the need for a marketing budget, and it really eliminated a need for websites and social media presence because we focus more on using our strong network as a way to increase our sales. And so, and I encourage a lot of business owners, because I've talked to a lot of business owners, and in many instances, social media just isn't working for them. But that's when you really want to go back and do it the old school way of, especially when everything opens up again, is to get out and meet people and work with people and have them to get to know you. And so they say word of mouth is the easiest form of marketing, but you also want the word getting to the right people. You can reach 1 million people on Facebook, but if they're not the right people, you have done nothing for your cause. You have done nothing for your brand. You can meet 3 key people and you network with them, and you can build $1 million brand. So there are different approaches to it. Do not try the one size fit all approach to what you're doing in terms of business, and don't be the follower. You have to be the leader in business. Now, that being said, all is not, wine and roses in the InUrban portfolio company. So we have a company, Bronzeville Sausage Company, which I say has the best chicken sausage around. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but that's what our customers say. But we have our accounts are primarily food service accounts, including Whole Foods and the Hot Bar, the University of Chicago and their student dining hall. And we all know that the Hot Bar, Whole Foods are closed. In most instances, food service accounts are just dried up. We serve restaurants. The University of Chicago closed its cafeteria because the students aren't around. And so we actually saw a huge decrease in sales, almost, and I would say down to zero. This company is poorly capitalized. Now, you say, well, you have one company that's well capitalized, one poorly capitalized. How is that so? We don't mix companies. So each company has to stand on its own. It has to have its own strategic plan. And so if Bronzeville is not going to, we may loan Bronzeville money every now and then, but Bronzeville has to operate as a separate business, and it has to be able to grow on its own without us giving it a lot of support. So what has saved Bronzeville? Once again, lean operation. So when we took over the helm of Bronzeville Sausage, they had 12 products. We reduced that down to 3 products. Some people think that the more products, the merrier. But when you start thinking about products and how do you support the products and how do you market products, that becomes a very expensive proposition. Also, we're dealing with raw meat products, which has a limited shelf life. And so if we can't sell rapidly 12 products, we're stuck throwing away a lot of product. And so when I joined the organization, that's what we had to initially do. We had to write down a lot of inventory that had expired. So we looked at it and we said, what are the products that are selling the best? And we found the 3 products represented 80% of the sales. So those are the only 3 products we sell. We have very little overhead. Bronzeville has no offices. We don't need it because we use a co-manufacturer. And so our overhead is really related to insurance costs and other costs of certifications and things like that. And as I talked about it, inventory management. So instead of having a lot of inventory on stock, we went to more of a just-in-time plus 25, as we call it. So we produce 200 cases. Normally, if we get a 200-case order, we ship 200 cases, and then we make 225 cases. So that's how we got started. And so we have 25 cases in stock. And so when our customer comes and orders the next 200 cases, we ship them 25 for a start, and then we produce 225 cases. So we never have more than 25 cases on hand. And so we figure even if we lost that customer, we can actually go out and sell those cases to somebody else because we do have the customers that buy that product as well. Cash flow at one point was really good, but now we have decent cash flow. But what we did with Bronzeville Sausage is we actually suspended the activities. We said, okay, we're in all food service accounts. They all shut down. Then our best bet is to do nothing and start thinking about more of the strategic plan and changing that strategic plan. And so what we did was we said, okay, we can't always rely on food service anymore. So let's look at how do we now develop a retail package, which we were working on, and how do we accelerate the development of our retail package, because meat was selling really fast in the stores during the pandemic. So that's our next step, is to now accelerate the development of our retail packaging. But as you see, it wasn't a pivot. It was something that was already in play, part of our strategic plan, because we wanted to diversify our customer base. And then what we did was like, let's accelerate this now instead of trying to come up with something new. And now that things are opening up, we see our sales returning. I was in Whole Foods the other day, and I was happy to see that they're reopening the hot bar, which is really good for us. But, and I tell some business owners, sometimes it's best that when really bad situations hit, to don't exacerbate those situations by actually trying to do more. Sometimes doing less will help put you in a much better position. And so now Bronzeville is in a much better position, and it actually has more cash in the bank than it ever had in say, a couple of years. So those are some of the things that we look at and say, okay, each company is different, and we have to have a different strategic plan for each one. And then last one is one that we're doing a startup, and it's Bronzeville Culinary Kitchen. So we're doing all things Bronzeville these days, although we operate more on the west side. It's a shared kitchen event space. And so we know events aren't happening, and it's a startup organization. So we haven't done one sale, but we've spent some money on the development side. But what's saving us? One of the things that we did, we negotiated very favorable lease terms when we started working with the landlord. And our lease terms say we sign a lease and we don't pay one dime in rent until 6 months after construction is done. Well, if we don't start construction, we don't pay rent, right? So what do? We delay the construction. And so we have control of the site. We don't pay rent. And so we don't have to spend out any money. So that has helped us. So now what are we doing? We are actually reimagining our business model here. And so we're looking at saying, okay, event space may not be as popular because not as many people can gather, but we do know that there are other things that we can support the community on. And so we do know that the shared kitchen will always be a money maker for us, at least a revenue stream for us. So what do we do with the event space? And now we're looking at say, well, a lot of restaurants have to go out of business, but some restaurant owners still have that passion for developing and feeding people and having a restaurant concept. So we're going to start looking at more how do we do pop-up restaurants, and also looking more on delivery options and having more what they call the ghost kitchen model as opposed to the event space. So there are things that, and these things were already in our plan in terms of other areas we can go. And so now, once again, we take it and then we adjust. And now that we feel comfortable about where the economy is going, that we feel that at some point COVID will run its course, we're going to start construction in October. And hopefully next spring, the world will be pretty close to normal. And then we'll be able to open up and exercise that new strategic plan that we're putting in the works right now. All right, and so back to that word pivot, and I always say it's a bad word because we don't want people pivoting, we want people planning, and that really is a take-home message from everything that we do and how we support our customer base, our client base, is that we never think about how do we help the client pivot, but we start with if we have a great plan, we'll have a lot of things built into those models, and that's what I encourage business owners to do. Is to really look at your business model and start planning options in that model that you can actually bring to light and bring forward in different situations. And I think that's an issue that a lot of business owners that we work with have. That's where the areas that they have the most significant problems with. So when we talk about tools for risk management, one of the things that we find that a lot of business owners don't have is insurance. And I say insurance is always a necessary evil, and that is one of the best risk management tools that you can have starting out the gate, but also a proper cash flow planning. And so, and that really is one of the clients that we work with, even one of our larger clients, have the most difficult time with cash flow planning. And I see this in business plans as well, because almost every business plan I see, the first year you're going to make $1 million. And so, and that usually is not the case, as we saw in the earlier slides. And so, but always saying they're going to make a ton of revenue and the expenses are going to be very low. So what I always tell people is to really take a very hard look at your expenses. Those are things that you can actually predict. Those are things that you can control. So when you're doing cash flow planning, just take a very hard look at all the money that you're going to spend out. And then once you write that number down, double it and say, this is how much I'm really going to spend out. And then go back and say, how do I cover that with cash? And it could be sales, but if you start overestimating your sales, you're putting yourself in a bad cash position because that money's not coming in. Think about, like, when does cash come in? So you can make a sale today, and for some businesses, they're on net 30. So a sale today means cash in 30 days. If you're working with most of the clients I work with, net 30 really means they're going to think about paying you in 30 days, and you're lucky to get the check in 45 to 60 days. Now, one thing I can say about the city of Chicago, and they actually pay in 30 days in many instances, which I am quite shocked on, but also quite pleased. Your SWOT analysis, make sure that it's a very in-depth assessment of your business, and then make sure that you really go through that and understand what are your true weaknesses and what are the true threats to your business. And then lastly, I think a lot of people do not do enough of this, and then understanding their industry. And so what I see is people using anecdotal evidence to support their business model when they're not using enough industry research to really understand what are the opportunities in the market and where are the untapped opportunities. And really being a successful business owner is about finding those untapped opportunities where you can find your place in the marketplace where it helps you grow your business as opposed to copying what somebody else is doing. And so, if you're in the T-shirt business, how do you distinguish your T-shirt business from someone else's T-shirt business? If you're in the food business, yes, your friends may say you make the best food they ever tasted, but are there enough clients who feel that your food is the best food they ever tasted? And if they feel it's the best food they ever tasted, are they willing to then purchase that on a regular basis? And so, part of the industry research is doing the footwork yourself. So you can find articles in the news and things like that, but you also need to hit the ground and really talk to people who are purchasing your products or purchasing products similar to yours, understand why they're purchasing those products, how they purchase those products and or services, and then formulate your business model around that. And so that's what we found. We just did a survey on the needs of small business owners. And so one of the things that we found is that most small business owners say they need cash, which we're expecting, right? Every small business owner needs cash. But what we found really amazing is that a significant portion of them said that they need more assistance with help understanding their business and helping to run their business. And they need that just almost as much as they need cash. And so there is a need there, and we uncovered the need. But that's the same thing that you have to do when you're researching the industry. And also, I'll use a quick example of the beverage business, and we're in the beverage business. We actually, we were developing products, and we had this product that we thought would be great for children. And so we had some name that related to children. What we found out is that there are other demographics who really love the product. And we only found that out through doing our market research and doing some focus groups. And so we ended up having to rethink our entire, our entire product line, because that gave us another market. And we can't market something specifically for kids to say adults. And so we had to change the name, change the label, and it actually became our best-selling product. So the other side of it is just because you think there's one market for it, there may be other markets for your product. And the only way you're going to figure that out is to go through the research and listen. And that's the other side that I've discovered is that some of the most unsuccessful business owners are not good listeners. They already have all the answers. And when you have all the answers, there's nothing that people can tell you, but you also turn a blind eye to the research and then what the numbers are telling you. And the numbers generally don't lie. Okay, so let's talk more about strategic planning, and let's talk about it a little more in detail because I really would like us to have a better understanding of that. So when we look at strategic planning, the first thing we do is we look at what we have right now. Where are we going to start? All right, so phase one is, we call it discovery. So that's when we start doing it, collecting a lot of information and data. It's like, what do you need to know and that you don't already know, right? And a lot of instances, as you start going through this process, you'll discover there's a lot of things you really didn't know. And so that takes us into phase two, and that's when we start looking at strategy, right? So we're going to start developing the strategy. And so what we want to look at, what are going to be the high return items? And so it could be like Bronzeville sausage, great example. So what's going to be a high return strategy? Well, number one, we need to cut down the number of products. And so we looked at it and said, boy, if we sold these 3 products, we could easily do 80% of the numbers without having to support 9 other products. And so the question is, well, we have one customer who loves this jerk chicken sausage, and we have to make the decision. Well, if they don't like these 3, they're not a customer. And so part of it is a business cannot serve everybody. And so there are going to be times when you say, that's not in our customer base, and so they have to find it somewhere else. And that worked really well for us. And what we found is that a lot of our clients said, oh, well, if you don't have that, then I'll take this. And so, but that's a chance that a business owner has to take. So then you go into the development and put into implementation. So putting those strategies into action. So if you do nothing else today and walk away from today, is take a look at this chart. Look at phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. And just start working those things. Now, the most important part of it all is how are you achieving these results? So in the nonprofit world, our nonprofit clients, they're not looking to, quote unquote, earn a profit, right? But they have specific outcomes that they're looking for. And if they get these outcomes, they say, okay, our programs were successful. As a business owner, the outcome is usually money and profits, right? So if you can make the money, you can earn the profits, then that's a good way. But there's other things that you can do as a business owner that could mean money and profits down the road. So if I'm working with a company who has a product that they're trying to put into retail establishments like a Whole Foods, then one of the success measurements could be how many retail establishments did we increase? How many doors, as they call it, are we in now versus last year? It could be, did we save money on the quote-unquote trade spend? Because that leads to more profitability. And so how do we make the marketing more efficient? So there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of your business. And really, the most important thing is, are these results meaningful? So in a lot of cases, people measure stuff that isn't really meaningful. In a business, it's kind of easy because, first of all, you're going to look at revenue and you may look at profitability. But there are other things that could be meaningful to your business. Did you increase your social media presence? If that's a way that you attract more interest in your business, right? If you're doing marketing online and you're paying for it, what is that return on investment? Can you increase that return on investment, say from 10% to say 20%? So how many click-throughs you're getting? How many closings are you getting? These are things that are very important to measure in terms of your business, and you should keep an eye on those things. And I tell people, if you're not reviewing it at least weekly, you don't have a good handle on your business. And so when I look at these things, if you do these things right, you would take out the need to pivot. So what you would do is you would adjust and you would navigate any crisis that comes along. And so I gave a few examples at the bottom of this slide. And what does that really, what do some of these things really mean? So, I talk to someone, they say, what do you want to do? I said, we want to triple our sales, right? But that may mean nothing if your sales are $10 a week, right? So be more quantitative about that. Put some hard numbers on it. So if we have revenue at $10,000 a month, we want to increase that to $30,000 a month. And I actually do this for all of our portfolio companies. We look at every year, we do our strategic planning, our end of year planning that goes into next year. And so one of our measurements and one of the key results that we're looking for is how are we going to increase revenue? And so then we hit the whiteboard and we start throwing ideas around, and we do it as a team to help understand what's realistic. And what we do is we call it, what is the path to that number, right? So what is the path to $30,000? And so we start getting more realistic. We have clients that are doing this amount of money in business. Can we increase the business there? Do we find new clients? It could be, on the other hand, it could be something really simple. I want to legitimize my business. I hear a lot of that too. But really what you want to do is you want to get business insurance. You want to file your taxes on time. You want to, and for just to put in a shameless plug for BACP, you want to get your business license. You want to make sure you have your business license. Those types of things. Or get our finances together. But what does that really mean? Put something hard and fast and something measurable on it. I want to generate $20,000 in profits by the end of the year. And then your plan should work into how you're going to do that, and you keep measuring that plan. All right, so we're getting close to the end, and I know when I originally wrote part of this presentation, it was right around the time that Kenny Rogers had died. And I like to use the lyrics for the Gambler as a way of helping people understand what it really means to be in business. And because going into business is pretty much a gamble, as we see that we usually have more losers than we do winners. And so there are times when you have to make decisions in your business, and especially in these times, we've all hit some no-go, no-go situations. And so, as the gambler said, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. And that is so true of any business. Part of your strategic assessment may say that we cannot operate this business in the way that we're operating, be profitable and sustainable. And so you have to make a decision. Do you change the business model, or do you shut it down? And in many instances, a lot of instances, shut down happens. It's not, and we'll talk about that a little later. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And then on the right-hand side, we have every gambler knows that the secret to surviving is knowing what to throw away and knowing what to keep, right? And so once again, it goes back to our Bronzeville sausage things. And it's like there's a lot of things in terms that we could throw away. And the products offerings, we can throw those away, and we keep those that are great. And that gamble paid off, and we are once again now the business is surviving, and we expect next year for it to start striving again. And then I put in bold: every hand's a winner, every hand's a loser. So what does that mean to me in terms of business? It means that no matter what business concept you have, it can be a winner and it can be a loser. It really depends on who's running the business and what is your strategic plan. So you can take two business concepts, and they can be very similar. One can make $1 million. The other one can start out the gate and falter. Why is that? I can almost guarantee you that one had a really good strategic plan that they implemented and it worked, and one didn't. One had the capital to withstand the tough times. One didn't. And so when you go into business, you really have to understand that the strategic plan is the most important part of being successful in business. Now, so what are the key takeaways? So as I said earlier, my career started off as a scientist, and so one of the areas that I know that people mistake in Darwin's theory of evolution is that it's about the strong surviving, and that is not true. Darwin did not say that. Basically, he said it's not the strongest of the species that survive, and it's not the most intelligent ones, but the ones that are most responsive to change. And that is really the basis of natural selection, right? It's the ones that are most responsive to change. And that's really what business is about. You have to be responsive to change. And so, and what we see, and a great example of that is Blockbuster Video. They decided they were not going to be responsive to change. They were just going to hold on to the last minute while everybody is, going to Redbox and Netflix and online streaming. And Blockbuster said, we're going to keep the video store. The video store isn't dead. And now Netflix is booming, Redbox is booming, and there's one Blockbuster Video left in this world. And I believe it's in Alaska. But they were not responsive to change. So what are the key takeaways? Capitalization is key, right? So cash is king. You cannot operate a business without cash. Now, one of the things that I also tell business owners, and this is one where I saw one of my clients went from a startup business to over $5 million in sales in 5 years. And because this concept of global cash flow, what does that mean? That means that when you start off a business, especially a product business, you're not necessarily going to make a ton of money in that business. So you have to have some way to survive. So a lot of the banks we work with, they say, we want to look at your global cash flow. So that means who's living in your household, how much money they're making, and we look at the entire household income, because if that can support your bills and that can support the payment of the loan, you'll get the loan. So one of my clients who went from zero to over $5 million in sales worked a full-time job and also built the business. And because she understood that she needed global cash flow, and that was the only way the business was going to survive. That was the only way she was going to be able to borrow money to get that. And so she was able to build a $5 million business without any investment capital. And so, but she understood that she needed money coming in. So as you start a business, you grow your business, really think about global cash flow because that's going to be very important for you staying in business. The next one is understand your market. So is there a real demand for your product or service? And in many instances, the answer is no, but people make up these demands and say, well, somebody said this was great. And since they said it was great, then I'm going to make a business out of it. But a real demand for your product or service means that there's somewhere in the marketplace that somebody is missing out on something, or they feel they're missing out on something, or they need something better than what they have, right? And it has to be then enough of them in your area, especially like if you're a service business, in your service area that can make it a sustainable business, right? Then who is your market? And once again, people mistake this. And when you do a business plan, they start talking about target market, and they say demographics. What is their race? How much money do they make? Where do they live? These things are cool, but what we discovered in this new world, that is not as important as to what they call the psychographics, and it is the behavior of the consumer as opposed to who the consumer really is. And so when you start lumping in people into behavioral characteristics as opposed to, say, the other traditional demographic characteristics, you start finding yourself better able to craft your market towards a behavior, what makes people tick. And so don't look at the traditional marketplace and market characteristics, but start looking at the behavioral characteristics. It doesn't matter what the race or age of someone is as much when you start talking about shopping online. So who really shops online? Why do they shop online? What are they looking for? Is that your type of product? What websites are they hitting? These are the most important things. Then second and thirdly, is your concept scalable? So can you take this concept, this service, this business, and can you start growing it? Not to a $10,000 a year business, but say to even a $200,000 a year business or whatever your goal is, right? But that goal has to be that at some point the business has to start making money. So that means that you need to scale the business. And so if you have been operating a business for 5 years and you haven't become profitable or you have not increased revenue over time, but you wanted to, then you have to stop and think about, like, why am I not scaling? Or is this concept truly scalable? If not, go back to your strategic plan and rebuild it to see how you can do that and work on how you can do that. There's a lot of emphasis around business plans. I absolutely hate business plans, but they're, once again, a necessary evil because it starts getting you to start conceptualizing your business. But most people, they don't take a really in-depth look at the business when they do a business plan. They basically do it because someone says do it, but it really is more of a concept and not, a lot of times, not rooted in reality. And that's why I turn around and say, let's do a strategic plan where we take elements of the business plan and we say, okay, how do we implement these things? How do we implement a marketing plan? How do we implement a financial plan? So that is the key, implementation. Concept is cool, but doing the work is more important. And then finally, there's always success and failure. I've operated businesses that have failed. I learned a lot. And part of it, too, is one of the things I learned in one business is that the most important lesson I learned is I stopped losing money, which was a great thing. So there was some success in that because I saw my bank account start to increase again after I let that business go. But what I did was I was able to then take the lessons learned and the money saved and start more successful businesses. So there's always success in business failure. And so the last question I would say take home with you is to ask yourself, what is your approach to surviving and thriving now that you've heard my presentation? So at this point, that concludes it all. And I will be more than happy to answer any questions that have come up, or if you have any questions now.
Shelby, this is Elisa. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was extremely in-depth and very informational, so thank you for spending your morning with us.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
All right. First, let's see. Just a comment of someone saying, so glad you're here with us today, Shelby.
Oh, okay. I was happy to be here.
All right. Someone commented, I need a mentor for my business. It is difficult because of my business. Can you talk a little bit about mentorship?
Sure. So that's one of the areas that we, as we start program development, that we have started connect. The most important part is we connect people with mentors. And so one of the things that we've discovered is that most people would think that they would want a mentor who knows their particular business. And what we found is that that doesn't necessarily work well. So what we found is that connecting people with mentors who have a wide array of resources and have a huge network works a whole lot better. And it's more important that the mentor and the mentee are able to have a good relationships in terms of open communication and a level of comfort with each other. And that tends to be a better mentor-mentor relationship than saying, oh, I'm in the food business. I need to have somebody who knows the food business well. And that's not necessarily the case. And we found that we have actually revamped our mentoring programs that we develop for our clients to say, let's not try to make these perfect matches because generally they don't work. What we found is that sometimes what seems to be an imperfect match works a lot better because the mentor and mentee feel comfortable with each other. And I think that's the most important part of a mentor-mentee relationship is that there's a willingness and an ease of exchanging ideas, and there's a no judgment zone.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I see when I have a martial arts business and people do not understand the dynamics. Yeah,
Mhm.
and once again, though, I think that really comes back to um, surrounding yourself with more than one person and soliciting the advice and opinions of people who've been in all walks of business. And so the first thing I would suggest to people, even if they feel that people don't understand their business, uh, be very specific about what you need in your business and what your goals are. And I think part of that once again starts with if you create a plan more around strategy, say here's what I want to do and here's what I want to accomplish. So it's not just I want to grow my business and I want to expand my business, but be very specific. I want to grow my business. I want X amount of clients. I want to I want to locate in this area. Uh, I know I can charge, $30 an hour, whatever the number is. Are there enough people willing to pay that? And where do I find those people? And so the more detail that you have, the easier it is for someone to come to walk alongside you and help you develop out that business model and help you answer those questions.
Thank you. Just a question on InUrban strategies and your client intake. How do you take on new clients?
Okay, so there are two ways we do that. We work directly with clients, and clients are usually small to medium-sized business owners who have one specific area they want to work on. Usually, it's something to do with finances, and then some of our clients we work with through nonprofit organizations, through our relationships with nonprofit organizations. So, if you're in the food business, we won't sign you on as an InUrban client. What we would do is we would sign you on through one of our nonprofit partners because they pay us to do that type of work. If you're in a business that's unrelated to what our clients do, then we will give you what we start off with is a business assessment to see what your needs are, and then we will have a meeting and we will talk about how we feel that we can help you. If we feel that we can't help you in a certain area, or that there's additional work that needs to be done before you come to our level of service, we'll actually then refer you to other nonprofit organizations who we work with. We feel that could help you get to that place without even spending any money. So for us, it's not about trying to bring on clients and make dollars off of every client, but it's really about serving the needs of the clients. And we do understand that there are other organizations that could do some of the work that we do for little or nothing, and we let those organizations do that.
Great. A question came in. I have a music production startup, but my revenue is coming from several tech contracts. I want to use those contracts as leverage to secure additional financing and leasing. Would InUrban strategies be able to assist?
Yes, and actually those are usually some of the easiest financing strategies for us because we have lenders who will work with companies who are startups, but we then look at, say, when we do cash flow planning, we talked about that a little earlier. So how do you then come in and say, okay, we are a growing startup and we can pay the loan back, which what banks are concerned about. And so now we start estimating cash flow. It's a lot easier to prove that to a bank that some money will be there when you have a contract in hand. And because now it takes some of the risk out and it's not necessarily speculative anymore. It's more about if we do the work, we'll get paid. So that becomes a lot easier. So yeah, we can help with that.
And for people wanting to contact you, what is the best method?
info@inurbanstrategies.com. And also, you could go on our website too, because it has a contact button there. Now that we have a website.
And that email, info@inurbanstrategies.com, has been posted in the chat box.
Okay,
so
great.
attendees can reference it there as well.
And if anybody has any questions, we'll be more than happy. Questions come, we'll be more than happy to answer those afterwards.
Great. And I don't see any additional questions coming in. I do want to mention that this webinar is being recorded and we will post it on the Chicago BACP YouTube page. And that link is youtube.com/Chicago BACP. Once again, Shelby, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And I wish everyone a good Friday and a good long weekend.
Yeah, everyone is the same as well, and I appreciate everyone for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.